Hello crafty friends, my name is Tazhiana and I am doing a video for Lindsey on her channel here today. I'm so sorry to hear that Lindsey and her boys have been super ill these last few days, but that's what friends are for, to help a friend out when they need content. So I know a lot of Lindsey's followers are doing gratitude documented with illustrated faith, and I know a lot of you guys are using the Heritage collection. So I figured to stay in the theme and the spirit of what's going on in the month and everything else, I'm going to make a scrapbook layout using the Heritage collection. I am a self-proclaimed hoarder when it comes to scrapbook supplies. It is very hard for me to use the stuff on my desk, so I pulled out everything I have from Heritage, and you can see it's a whole lot. And I'm scrapping this photo of my cousins and I. I went to Georgia to spend Christmas with my family last winter, and so I have this photo from when we went out, and it was taken in a really dark. We went to a lounge, and so we saw like a concert, and it was taken in a really dark room. So I printed it in black and white just because the colors were not going to match with everything else that was going on. And I have no idea what's going to happen with this layout. I know I have Heritage, I know I have my photo, and let's play together. So I'm going to stop babbling now, put this on fast forward, and get started with my project. Alright crafty friends, so let's switch gears to voiceover mode now. I sped this up and edited this layout quite a bit. The raw footage of it was about 50 minutes long, so even though I took out a fair amount for the video, this is not a terribly time-consuming layout, and nothing I did was technically difficult where, you know, it's like a technique where you might not be able to recreate at home. This is actually really easy layout to put together and a really easy layout to stash bust with. So what I'm doing right now is scrolling through my 6x8 paper pad, and this is something that I do really often if I don't know where I want to start with the layout. Also, if you want a way to have a pattern background but you're not comfortable using a full 12x12 sheet of pattern paper, this is also a really interesting way to add patterns to your background, and you can use a bunch of different colors and a bunch of different scraps, and again, this is a great way to stash bust. So I went through the 6x8 Heritage paper pad, and I picked out papers that had some simple patterns and papers that had some bigger patterns, and I tried to go with a bunch of colors just because the Heritage collection is so beautiful and there are so many fun patterns in the pattern paper pack and in the collection. Maggie Holmes and Crate Paper always do a great job with pattern papers. Like, this paper is my favorite part of any collection. I mean, the embellishments are nice, but if you don't have a good foundation to start with, then it's really hard to go from there. So what I did was I cut a bunch of the papers of different widths, and some of the papers I had already cut into, so they were different lengths. So you had a bit of interest on the page. And then the other thing you saw me doing is something that I do quite often, is I take a picture of what I've arranged on my desk. My scrapbooking style is very much stick it and go. Like, I don't really second guess things or try things out. I tend to arrange things. I'm like, yep, I like it. I take a picture, it's going. So now the other thing I'm doing now is ripping the edges of the papers. I'm very much a messy scrapbooker, but it has to be contained mess. So I like to have rough edges and, you know, ruffles and distressed things all over my layout. So I ripped one side of each of the papers and I'm layering it over each other, and it just adds another little bit of interest, I guess. I've seen Lindsey do a similar technique on her channel, but she does it with a ruler because she's a little bit tidier than I am. There's also like tools you can use for this. Tim Holtz makes a paper distressing tool that also works really well. So if you don't want to actually rip your papers, it's like a little circle thing that has a blade in it, and that does a similar effect. So now I'm using tape to adhere my paper strips to my background, and I'm using basil cardstock in the marshmallow color. This is my favorite white cardstock for scrapbooking because it's super smooth and it also has some heft to it. So if you are the type of person who likes to add some mixed media to your background but you don't want to have to stop and use gesso, basil cardstock's a really good cardstock for soaking up mixed media and not warping a ton. So now what I'm doing is I'm using a tiny bit of adhesive. I put a ton of adhesive on the first strip, and then I realized that I wanted to actually sew these paper layers on. And since my sewing machine and I barely get along on the best of days, I figured I wouldn't put a super like heavy amount of adhesive for the sewing machine to go through, because I don't want to like gunk up my needle. And I don't know if that makes a difference, but I find that when I use a lot of adhesive and then I sew through the papers, my sewing machine just misbehaves, and I don't know how to sew. Everything I know about using my sewing machine I learned from YouTube, so I don't want to rock the boat and make it any more difficult. And then I realized I don't have enough paper. My paper on the right side almost goes to the edge of the page, and I had a huge gap on the left side. So I just went right back in my paper, picked another pattern that I liked, did the same thing, ripped off the edges, and now it's going on the page. And also, I liked that pop of the dark green. There are a fair bit of darker papers in the Heritage Collection, and so if I wanted to get like a full look at the papers, so this makes the most sense to add this dark green. Also, it looks really good at the edge because it kind of like brackets the layout. So now I'm like fussing with my T-square. I can't put things straight on to save my life. I always need a little bit of help. But once I get it on, then I'm going to pull out my sewing machine. And this part, through the magic of editing, you don't have to watch because first, I couldn't figure out how to thread my needle, so that was a thing. And then I'm using metallic thread. And if you've ever used metallic thread is notoriously fussy. And so every time I stitched a line, it broke and I had to thread the needle again. And halfway through it, I was like, do I really want to do this? But I had already stitched through the others, so I did it. The other thing I did was I used a zigzag stitch instead of using a straight line, and I stitched a little bit before each row of paper and then a little bit after, so the stitching goes onto the white cardstock, and I left the threads on the white cardstock. Like, I didn't put them behind the cardstock and tape them on. And again, this is just my controlled mess. Like, I like the messy look. What I did do though to contain the bobbin threads is I used a little bit of washi on the back side of the layout, and I taped the bobbin threads on the back side. And this is going to help secure my threads so they don't go everywhere. So the other thing I did just now was I pulled out all the same pattern papers that I used on my background, and then I matted my photo. I like to have a pretty big photo mat, especially when I have a black and white photo. I like to put a bunch of pattern papers behind it, and since these patterns are already on the background, it tends to just match. Like, you're not introducing any new colors or any new textures. You're working off of what you already have, so it works really, really well. So now I'm just sorting through the ephemera pack. I have already used a bit of this. I was doing some gratitude documented cards, and I've used some of the Maggie Holmes collection, which is why you saw my heritage papers were already cut into. And when I open an ephemera pack, normally I keep them in these Iris 4x6 scrapbooking cases, but because the heritage collection is living on my desk, that container's a little bit clunky, so I keep it in a glassine bag, and that way I can just put out all the bits and pieces back in the bag when I'm finished scrapbooking, and everything stays where it's supposed to. So that's a little tip. If you're working by collections, most companies have these 12x12 plastic bags, or like Studio Calico and Ali Edwards have these 12x12 zipper bags. Keep everything together. I shared on my Instagram stories a while ago how I bought an IKEA Cavissel. It's like a paper storage unit, and I keep that right on my desk. And all the collections I'm currently using live on my desk all the time, just so I don't have to go looking for bits and pieces. Everything is where it should be. So I also mentioned that my scrapbooking style is very much pick it, stick it, and go. So what I was doing was I literally went through the ephemera pack, I picked up a bunch of pieces, I said yes, no, and then I just put it around my layout. My embellishing style, I like to have things behind my photo, and then things on top of my photo, and then things layered in between. I think it just adds a bit of interest when you have things at different layers and different levels of the layout. So that's another tip. Put things behind your photo, and then also put things on top of it and see how it goes. So like you see, I have like a tag on the left side behind it, and then I have another tag on top of that, and then I had that vellum wreath, and then I had flowers, and I just layer things. I don't know if there's a way to teach people how to layer things. I know Lindsey was talking about doing a Tip Tuesday on layering embellishments, so I hope she has a better way of teaching, because I've just figured this out as I go. I've been scrapbooking for going on 4 years now, and my design style has not changed very much, actually. Like, it's evolved and it's a little bit more like refined, for lack of a better term, but it hasn't changed. It's very much, I like paper, I like layers, and I like piecing things together. So what I did was, now I'm sticking on all of my paper embellishments, and then I pulled out that portrait piece from the chipboard because I had that portrait paper in my background. So I thought it would be fun to tie those elements together. And then I layered the portrait piece over top that vellum flower. And all I'm doing is just putting my embellishments and going. I added that family chipboard piece to the top left part of my photo. And then here is a little bit of design theory, because everybody talks about the rule of thirds. So if you're using one type of element, you should use two more of it to create like a visual triangle. So I have my 2 chipboard pieces, and now I'm like freaking out because I'm like, I must add a 3rd chipboard piece and I don't know where to add it. So I stopped, and I eventually do come back and add that 3rd chipboard piece, just because it's going to drive me nuts if I don't have the 3rd piece, because I'm not like a real designer, but I do like to stick to the rule of thirds. The other thing I have to say is, don't be afraid to cut embellishments up. That wreath sticker from the from the cardstock sticker sheet was stunning, but it would have been hidden if I had just put it behind the photo. So I cut it in half, and then I put it on the top and the bottom of the photo. Like, these are your products and you can do with them what you want. So cut stuff up, move stuff around, like ruffle up some edges, distress things, make this layout your own and make these products your own. So the other thing I wanted to do was add some purple, because I had some purple in my background. So there was that purple die cut piece, and then I layered a sticker from the clear sticker pack that just said, "I love this." And now, since I added that one clear sticker, now I must add other clear stickers, because this is me we're talking about. So I, off camera, I backed my whole photo complex on fun foam. I edited that out because it's very fussy putting everything on fun foam, but I have this fun foam pack that you get from Michael's. It's literally just kids craft foam, and I put the whole thing up on foam to add some dimension, and then I added the clear stickers directly to the background, so they're tucked under the foam, directly stuck to the background on the layout. And in the pictures, you'll be able to see that the layout is kind of propped up a little bit, and then you have all the elements behind it. So now I'm just working on my title. I'm using the foam stickers for my title, and my title is Always Remember. I had a little bit of trouble with these stickers because I don't know if it was just mine or if it's all of them, but they weren't very sticky. So I had to go back and add some glue behind them to get them to stick down. I keep my glue in a 18 gauge fine line bottle. So another scrappy tip, having glue in a fine line bottle is a lifesaver, because gluing down fussy bits and pieces when you have like a normal glue spout does not work very well. So I like to have my glue in a fine line bottle. And then I added that gold portrait piece on the right side of the layout, because same thing, since I had those puffy stickers at the bottom, I wanted to have the puffy sticker somewhere else. And I play around with trying to add that glitter butterfly, but it doesn't work no matter how much I want it to. So to finish off the layout, I add some chipboard hearts around the page, and I call it good. So I'm gonna let this keep playing so you can see the rest of my process. I have some close-up photos at the end, but I'm going to stop babbling about my layout, and I just want to say thank you to Lindsey for allowing me to have this video on her channel. I hope she's feeling so much better, and I hope you enjoyed watching me scrap, and I hope you learned something today. So again, my name's Tazhiana. She's going to have all my social media links in the description box if you want to come over and see some other things I've made. And till next time, here's my signature sign off. Till next time, keep it crafty, friends, and have the best day.